Yes, that's actually true. What had happened was I was doing a series of pictures for the two strongest independent distribution companies at the time, AIP, American International, and Allied Artists. And each company had developed or found a sales gimmick. They would produce two black and white 10-day pictures, generally costing $60, $70, $80,000, and release them together on a double bill with the advertising, two pictures for the price of one. Two science fiction pictures, two horror films, two gangster films, two teenage films, and so forth. And AIP wanted me to do two more horror films. I was getting fairly tired of this, and everything was shot on a 10-day schedule. So I told them, and I thought this was true, that this had been a sales gimmick that had worked, but was not working quite so well. Since I had a percentage of the profits, I could see that the profits were like this, but they were just generally drifting downhill. And it was still profitable for the company to make them, but not as profitable as before. So I said that to him, and I said, you're playing this game, you play this game too often. What I suggest is, instead of giving me $70,000 or $80,000 a picture for two pictures, give me $200,000 for one picture in color, and it'll be a color horror film and will stand on its own. And they asked me what I wanted to do, and I said The Fall of the House of Usher, a story of Pope that I'd always loved. There was a little discussion, but they were not really against it. AIP was a young, fairly adventurous company, and I think they themselves wanted to, as it were, move up. The final point was, Sam Markoff said, but Roger, there's no monster in the House of Usher. And thinking very quickly, I said, Sam, the house is the monster. And they agreed to make the picture on that basis.
Well, we're going to take a look, actually not at House of Usher, but at Pit and the Pendulum, the second of the Poe pictures. I couldn't resist showing this because it is the it is the Pit and the Pendulum scene. It's particularly wonderful seeing it in widescreen because you actually see the pendulum go from over here all the way over to there. So can we run the Vincent Price going demented sequence?
Shot. Yeah. No, it's interesting. The castle was also in that shot. Today, I think you could not get away with that because of the computer graphics and the advance in special effects. But in its day, this was made around 1959, 1960, something like that. Those were completely accepted by the audience. The main thing I remember about this scene was John Carr, who played the young man under the pendulum. And as I said, it was shot in 15 days with a fairly low budget, looked up and saw this thing. And we were practicing. The prop man was having it swing back and forth. He said, Roger, I'm not so sure. I'm seeing it under that. And I said, don't worry about a thing. John, we're working it out now. I'll take your position and I'll show you that it's totally safe. I laid there and this thing was coming back and forth. And I thought, I'm not sure this is a good idea. But it all worked out. Incidentally, one of the things that sometimes nice things happen accidentally. I always plan my films as much as I can. I never get them 100%. I always plan to get them 100%, but I'll get them 80 or 90% planned in advance, because with 15 days, you don't have time to sit on the set and say, I wonder where I'll put the camera. You better say the camera goes there. Before going into, this was the last day of shooting, before going into overtime, I finished the scene, and we had about half an hour, and I thought, well, I don't want to waste the half an hour, and we had a camera on a crane. So I got on the crane with the camera and gave instructions to the crane operator. We're going, because Danny Haller, the art director, had painted all those images you see on the walls. And I said, we're just going to go around the walls, panning, dollying here, coming in there, set shots there, and I will try to make a montage out of that to go with the pendulum. And I always thought it was one of those things where I just made up my mind on the spot, and I thought they would work very well.
No, it gives it a kind of almost pre-psychedelic feel, doesn't it? The green lit flashes. Even before you got to making this kind of weird hippie movies a little later, it seems to be the beginnings of that style is already beginning to appear then. We'll come back to the Poe pictures in a minute, but I'd like to talk a bit more about your ventures into other genres in the 60s. You made war movies, you made science fiction movies, you made social comment pictures. Were you like picking off every possible thing that you could do?
I was, yes, to a large extent. In particular, the social comment picture you mentioned, The Intruder, starring a new young actor just out from New York, Bill Shatner, playing the lead. I had had a really incredible run of success. I had made something like 14, 15, 16 pictures and never had a failure. Everything got to the point where I could tell any one of several independent companies any idea I wanted, and they would say, yes, we'll make it. The Intruder was about the racial integration in the South, which of course was a major event of the late 50s. And I bought a book about it by Chuck Beaumont, and Chuck wrote the screenplay, and I showed it to these companies that always accepted anything I wanted to make. I was turned down by every one of them. I couldn't believe that they were actually turning me down. So I finally financed the picture with my own money, and we shot it in 3 weeks for about $70,000, $80,000 again, deliberately this time in black and white. And it got wonderful reviews. I still remember the key review of one of the New York papers that said, this motion picture is a major credit to the entire American film industry. The first picture I ever made that lost money.
But surely by now it must have at least broken even, because it's still being revived, it's still coming out on DVD. It is now a well-regarded film. It must have entered the black.
It did. Bill Shatner and I did a commentary for the DVD, and off of the DVD, I called him and I said, Bill, we finally broke even. It took 30-some years, but we've done it.
Yeah. Well, so that's your 100% record restored. Anyway, the next movie I'm going to show a chunk of is another favorite of mine from this period. It's either called X, the Man with X-Ray Eyes, or The Man with X-Ray Eyes, or X, depending on what print you see it in, I think. But anyway, look at the climax of this film, which actually we're not quite the climax, we're at again, one of the transcendental, visionary, weird bits. So, X-ray eyes is something that people have dreamed about for years and years and years, and they used to have those adverts for X-ray specs in comics. But apart from one Russ Meyer film, this is the only X-ray eyes movie. So why did you hit on it, and why has no one else done one?
I just had the idea. I did not have a storyline. I had the idea for a man with X-ray eyes, and I told it to Jim Nicholson, who was the head of production at EIFF. Again, I was on a winning streak, and I didn't even have to tell people the storyline. I told him the idea. He said, yeah, we'll back that. And so I started working on it, and you may notice, which is interesting, at least to me, if nobody else, at the beginning when we have the montage of Las Vegas, I have jazz music running through it, which changes to lounge piano music when he comes in. And my original idea was that it was going to be a jazz musician. I was thinking of a saxophone player, on the fact that it was well known that some jazz musicians have been known to take dope. So I started working on a storyline about a jazz musician who took drugs and developed X-ray vision. And the story didn't go anywhere, so I threw it away. And I went really reluctantly to this storyline, which was of a scientist who was doing research on the eye, because I felt that's a little ordinary. I mean, I would rather have had something wilder, but this is the only one that made sense to me. So I followed my usual technique. I wrote about a 10-page storyline or treatment, and gave it, I think, to Ray Russell to develop the screenplay.